The billionaire never believed in love at first sight until one extraordinary girl captured his heart in an instant, but the very woman who changed his world refused to trust him. Adrian Whitmore had everything money could buy: billions, power, and success, but years of heartbreak had convinced him that love was nothing more than an illusion. Then he met Emma Carter, an ordinary music teacher whose kindness touched hearts in ways wealth never could. One glance shattered everything the billionaire believed about love at first sight, but while he was determined to win her heart, Emma was determined never to trust another man again. But why did one look at Emma change the billionaire's life forever? What painful secret made her push love away? And when she discovered who Adrian really was, would his greatest secret bring them together, or destroy the only chance they had at true love? The Grand Crescent Hotel glittered beneath crystal chandeliers as the city's wealthiest guests gathered for the annual Hope for Tomorrow charity gala. Among them sat Adrian Whitmore, the 35-year-old billionaire behind Whitmore Technologies, a global company worth billions. Dressed in a tailored black tuxedo, he looked every bit the powerful businessman, yet his attention remained fixed on the emails glowing on his phone. "You should at least watch the final performance," his PR director, Sophie, whispered. "I'll stay 5 minutes," Adrian replied coolly. He had learned long ago that emotions were expensive. After his father abandoned the family and his overworked mother died from an illness they couldn't afford to treat, he buried his heart beneath ambition, quietly breaking the promise she'd made him whisper at her bedside, to become a good man, not just a rich one. Applause suddenly echoed through the ballroom. Emma Carter stepped onto the stage beside 30 nervous children. Instead of seeking attention, she knelt to comfort a frightened little violinist with a warm smile. The child's trembling stopped instantly. Adrian slowly lowered his phone. For reasons he couldn't explain, the billionaire who never believed in love at first sight couldn't take his eyes off the extraordinary girl standing beneath the spotlight. Emma raised her hand gently and the children began to sing. Their voices were far from perfect, yet every note carried a sincerity that silenced the ballroom. Guests who had spent the evening discussing investments and luxury holidays suddenly stopped talking. Even the waiters paused. Adrian couldn't explain why his heartbeat had quickened. It wasn't simply Emma's beauty. It was the quiet way she encouraged every child with reassuring nods, celebrating each small success before they noticed it themselves. She wasn't performing for applause. She was giving frightened children the confidence to shine. When the final note faded, the audience rose in a standing ovation. Emma smiled politely, bowed with the children, and quickly guided them backstage before anyone could surround her with praise. "Mr. Whitmore," Sophie said, "the mayor wants to introduce you." "You go ahead," Adrian replied, his eyes still fixed on the stage. "I'll join you shortly." The first time in years, a business meeting no longer seemed important. By the time Adrian reached backstage, the room was nearly empty. Volunteers were folding chairs while parents gathered excited children. "Excuse me," Adrian asked an elderly stage manager. "The music teacher, Emma Carter. She just left with the children," the man answered. "She never stays for attention." On a nearby chair rested a worn blue music folder. "She forgot this," Adrian murmured. Inside were neatly arranged sheet music and a handwritten note tucked between the pages. "Every child deserves someone who stays." The simple sentence stirred an old memory. As a frightened 14-year-old, he had watched his father disappear through their front door without looking back, leaving his mother to whisper, "We'll survive." Adrian carefully closed the folder, unaware that those 7 handwritten words would soon challenge the life he had built around never needing anyone. Outside the ballroom, another pair of eyes had been watching him. Victor Langston, Adrian's longtime business rival, noticed the billionaire holding the forgotten folder and smiled faintly. "What caught your attention tonight, Adrian?" he muttered under his breath. "Whatever it is, it might finally become your weakness." Adrian stared at the handwritten note long after the ballroom had emptied. "Every child deserves someone who stays." The words echoed in his mind throughout the drive home, louder than the congratulatory messages flooding his phone. By morning, instead of sending an assistant to return the forgotten folder, he decided to deliver it himself. The address printed inside led him to Maplewood Children's Hospice, a modest brick building tucked away from the city's gleaming skyline. Luxury cars rarely visited this place, so Adrian left his chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce a street away and walked the remaining distance alone, dressed simply in jeans and a navy sweater. Years of avoiding magazine covers and television interviews meant few people recognized the billionaire behind Whitmore Technologies, a choice he had made to protect his privacy long before his success made him famous. Inside, Emma was helping children paint colorful murals across a wall. Without looking up, she smiled. "You must be the new volunteer." Adrian hesitated. "I suppose I am." "Perfect." She handed him a mop with an easy grin. "The activity room needs saving before lunch." He almost laughed. Boardrooms obeyed his commands, yet here he quietly mopped the floor beside teenagers and retirees who had no idea they were working alongside one of Britain's wealthiest men. Watching Emma comfort a frightened little boy with the same patience she had shown on stage, Adrian remembered his mother's gentle hands wiping away his tears after his father left. The memory warmed and ached in equal measure. From across the street, Victor Langston lowered a camera after photographing Adrian entering the hospice. "So," he whispered, "the billionaire has found someone worth hiding for." Adrian returned to Maplewood Children's Hospice the following Saturday, telling himself he was only honoring a volunteer commitment. Yet as he parked discreetly around the corner again, he knew the truth was far less logical. He wanted to see Emma. The morning buzzed with laughter as children prepared for a small garden concert. Emma moved from one child to another, tying shoelaces, tuning tiny violins, and calming nervous hearts with effortless warmth. "You came back," she said, genuinely surprised. "I said I'd help." "Most people don't come back," she replied with a faint smile that quickly faded, as though experience had taught her not to expect consistency. Her words lingered, they carried the weight of old disappointments, hinting at wounds she rarely spoke about. She handed Adrian a toolbox. "Can you fix the broken benches? The children want to sit outside." "I'll do my best." As he worked, Emma watched him from a distance. Most wealthy donors she had met preferred cameras to hard work, yet this quiet volunteer never complained, never sought praise, and stayed long after everyone else had left. Something about him felt different, though she couldn't explain why. Across the afternoon, they spoke between tasks. "What do you do for work?" Emma asked. "I run a company." She smiled. "That sounds important." "Not as important as what you do." Emma laughed softly. "The children would disagree, they think I just make them sing." Hidden beneath her laughter, a brief flash of memory surfaced. A diamond ring returned across a cafe table, a fiancé insisting, "I only hid the truth because I loved you." She pushed the painful memory away before it reached her face. Nearby, an elderly volunteer quietly observed them, smiling knowingly, while Victor's investigator snapped another discreet photograph from a parked car, adding yet another piece to a puzzle that would soon become a weapon. Emma and Adrian soon settled into an unspoken routine. Every Saturday he arrived before sunrise and left after the last child had gone home. He repaired broken toys, carried supplies, and quietly joined every task without expecting recognition. To everyone at Maplewood Children's Hospice, he was simply Adrian, the dependable volunteer who never missed a weekend. One afternoon, Emma handed him a small keyboard to fix. "I thought you said you only run a company," she teased. "I do." She folded her arms with a playful smile. "Then why are you surprisingly good with tools?" Adrian chuckled. "My mother believed every man should know how to repair what he can before paying someone else." The answer was true, though incomplete. Long before becoming a billionaire, he had spent countless evenings repairing old furniture with his mother because buying new ones had been impossible. Those humble lessons had stayed with him long after wealth erased every financial struggle. Emma smiled, unaware that the man tightening the final screw had signed a multi-billion-pound merger only days earlier. Later that afternoon, an elderly woman entered carrying homemade biscuits. "Gran," Emma exclaimed, hugging her warmly. Margaret Carter studied Adrian with observant eyes. "So you're the volunteer Emma keeps mentioning." "I hope that's a good thing," Adrian replied politely. "We'll see," Margaret answered with a knowing smile. As they talked, Margaret quietly noticed something unusual. Adrian greeted every cleaner, nurse, and child by name. Most wealthy donors remembered none. Across the street, Victor Langston watched from inside a black SUV. "So she's introduced him to family already," he muttered, lowering his binoculars. He dialed a number. "Daniel, I finally know how we'll destroy Adrian Whitmore, find out everything about Emma Carter." Neither Adrian nor Emma realized that their growing friendship had already become the centerpiece of a carefully planned revenge. Several weeks later, Maplewood prepared for its biggest fundraising concert of the year. Emma realized the hospice was missing a major corporate sponsor after a last-minute cancellation. "We may have to cancel the music program," the director sighed. "I'll deliver sponsorship proposals myself," Emma said. "Someone has to give these children a chance." Armed with a folder of handwritten proposals, she spent the morning visiting companies across the city. Most receptionists politely declined. By late afternoon, only one name remained on her list: Whitmore Technologies. She stepped into the towering glass headquarters, impressed by its elegance but unaware of its owner. The receptionist accepted her proposal with a smile. "Please wait a moment." As Emma glanced around the grand lobby, her eyes settled on a massive portrait mounted behind the reception desk. Her smile vanished. Beneath the photograph were polished silver letters. Adrian Whitmore, Founder and Chief Executive Officer. The folder slipped slightly in her hands. "No." Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. Every conversation replayed itself at once. "I run a company. Nothing important. I prefer simple weekends." None of them had been lies. But none had been the whole truth. Without speaking, Emma turned and hurried outside before anyone could stop her. At that exact moment, Adrian stepped out of the executive lift, carrying the sponsorship proposal his assistant had just handed him. "Where's Miss Carter?" he asked. "She just left, sir." His smile faded. Across the street, Victor watched Emma disappear with tears filling her eyes. He smiled coldly. "The first crack has appeared." Far away, Margaret looked at an old newspaper clipping she had quietly kept for months, a photograph of Adrian volunteering anonymously at another children's hospice years earlier. She folded it carefully and whispered to herself, "I hope you told her before someone else did." But she already feared the answer. Adrian drove straight to Maplewood after learning Emma had visited Whitmore Technologies, but the warmth that usually greeted him had disappeared. The children waved as always, yet Emma quietly avoided his eyes, pretending to organize sheet music. "Emma," he said softly, "can we talk?" She took a slow breath before facing him. "You own Whitmore Technologies." "Yes." "And you let me believe you were just an ordinary volunteer. I wanted you to know me before my money." A faint, sorrowful smile crossed her face. "That's exactly what someone else once said." Her words unlocked memories she had spent years trying to bury. In a quiet flashback, Emma remembered sitting across from her former fiancé in a small cafe, sliding her engagement ring across the table after discovering he had secretly borrowed money using her grandmother's name. Through tears, he had pleaded, "I only hid the truth because I loved you." His deception had cost Margaret her savings, and left Emma believing that hidden truths always led to broken hearts. "You didn't lie," she whispered, struggling to hold back tears, "but you chose what I was allowed to know." "I was afraid," Adrian admitted. "I didn't want my name to become the reason you stayed or the reason you walked away." Before Emma could answer, several reporters suddenly surrounded the hospice gates. "Cameras," one volunteer gasped. Microphones were thrust toward Emma. "Miss Carter, is it true you're dating billionaire Adrian Whitmore for financial gain?" Across the road, Victor Langston watched the chaos unfold beside Daniel Whitmore, whose leaked information had made the ambush possible. Victor smiled coldly. "Now she'll discover what loving a billionaire really costs." Flashing cameras lit up the hospice entrance as reporters shouted over one another. Children who had been laughing only moments earlier clung nervously to their teachers. "Please," Emma pleaded, shielding a frightened little girl, "you're scaring the children." No one listened. Adrian immediately stepped between the reporters and the children. "Leave them alone," he said firmly. "If you have questions, ask me." The next morning, every headline told the same false story: billionaire secret romance used to boost charity image. Within hours, parents began calling the hospice. Some withdrew donations, others questioned whether Emma had manipulated wealthy sponsors for personal gain. Devastated, Emma stared at the newspaper. "I've spent years earning their trust," she whispered. "Now it's disappearing because of me." "No," Adrian replied quietly, "because of me." Back at Whitmore Technologies, the board of directors demanded an emergency meeting. "You must publicly distance yourself from Emma Carter," one director insisted. "The company's reputation comes first." Adrian looked around the room before calmly removing his CEO badge and placing it on the polished table. "If protecting my company means abandoning an innocent woman, then I'm protecting the wrong thing." The room fell silent. Watching the live news conference, Emma was stunned as Adrian accepted full responsibility and refused to mention her name even once. Meanwhile, Margaret opened an old wooden box and removed several photographs. One showed Adrian volunteering anonymously at another children's hospice nearly 5 years earlier. She had recognized him the day he first walked into Maplewood. She had simply waited to discover whether he came because he loved attention, or because he truly cared. As Victor celebrated what he believed was Adrian's downfall, Margaret quietly smiled. "The hardest test of a man's heart," she whispered, "is almost over." Emma watched Adrian's press conference over and over that night. He had accepted every accusation without once shifting the blame onto her. For the first time since discovering his identity, she questioned whether she had judged him too quickly. A man protecting his fortune would have sacrificed her. Adrian had sacrificed his position instead. The next morning, Margaret quietly placed the old photographs on the kitchen table. "I recognized Adrian the first day he came to Maplewood," she admitted. Emma stared at her grandmother in disbelief. "You knew?" Margaret nodded. "I also knew he had been volunteering anonymously at children's hospices for years, long before he met you. A man can fake generosity for a day, Emma, but not for 5 years." The truth settled heavily in Emma's heart. Meanwhile, Victor prepared his final move. Through Adrian Whitmore, he released forged financial documents accusing Adrian of secretly diverting company funds through the hospice. News outlets rushed to publish the allegations before verifying them. But Daniel barely slept that night. Every lie reminded him of the cousin who had once paid for his daughter's life-saving surgery without ever asking for repayment. Adrian had protected his family in silence while Daniel had repaid him with betrayal. Unable to bear the guilt any longer, Daniel walked into Victor's office. "It's over," he said firmly. Victor narrowed his eyes. "You think you can walk away now? I should never have helped you destroy the only man who ever stood by me." As Daniel turned to leave, Victor reached for his phone. "You've just signed your own downfall." Neither man realized investigators had already begun tracing the forged documents back to Victor's company, and by sunrise, the truth would finally have a chance to set everything right. By sunrise, investigators had traced the forged financial records to Victor Langston's company. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Daniel walked into the authorities' office and confessed everything. He admitted leaking confidential information, exposing Victor's scheme to destroy Adrian by using Emma as the perfect target. Victor was arrested before the markets opened, his years of revenge ending in handcuffs instead of victory. Later that afternoon, Emma found Adrian sitting alone in Maplewood's quiet garden, repairing the same little wooden bench he had promised the children weeks earlier. "You still came back," she said softly. Adrian looked up with a gentle smile. "I told you I would." Tears filled Emma's eyes. "I was afraid your secret meant you were like the man who betrayed me, but you kept proving over and over that your heart never changed, only my fears did." "I'm sorry I hid who I was," Adrian replied. "I wanted you to love the man before the billionaire." Emma reached for his hand. "And now I do." Months later, Maplewood Children's Hospice unveiled its expanded music center, funded through a charitable foundation named after Margaret Carter rather than Adrian. As the children performed the same song that had first brought them together, Adrian knelt before Emma, holding the restored wedding ring that had belonged to his late mother. "It isn't the most expensive ring I could buy," he said, "but it's the most honest thing I own. Emma Carter, will you marry me?" With tears of joy she whispered, "Yes." As applause filled the garden, Margaret smiled peacefully. Her words had finally come true. A rich man had given his wealth. A good man had given his heart. And the billionaire who never believed in love at first sight discovered that while love can begin with a single glance, it only lasts when it is built on truth, trust, and the courage to stay.